then we collect data that supports our opinion, and that's absolutely not data-driven. That's kind of a, it's not even data-assisted. It's maybe a data-assisted mistake usually, because nothing good comes out of. Somebody once said that gut decisions are dangerous because it depends on what you had for breakfast.
That's so true. That's so true. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Hotelier podcast with me, Sam-Erik Ruttmann. My guest today is Sami Hero. He is actually a fellow Finn, which is unusual. I don't have many Finns usually on my podcast episode, but I'm particularly proud, so I have to mention it to you who are listening and watching to this episode. Sami has an international career, and like both of us, we've been working many years abroad. But Sami brings a strong background in marketing, sales, analytics, and customer success. And known for being a data-driven decision maker with a big picture mindset and plenty of empathy, he's passionate about helping organizations navigate the digital transformation journey. So welcome, Sami, and thanks very much for joining us today.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure to meet with you. And yes, another fellow Finn. I spent 23 years abroad, so before I came back chasing a startup dream.
Yeah, well, I did my 37, so I'm ahead of you a little bit.
Yeah, you beat me there.
Still learning how to deal with this here.
Yeah, fabulous.
So I think it would be good if you could share a little bit about your professional background and then also about your current activities, so get the view of what you've been doing all these years and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I have my history is very technical. So engineering background from computer science and industrial economy and psychology. But I became, I would say, almost accidentally, I became a marketing and sales guy, and then just general manager while I was in the US. And I've done stints in huge corporations, like SAP or Reed Elsevier and some of the other very large companies, as well as startups. I think I've done now about four different kinds of startups in Europe and US, and none of them worked really that well that I could have retired already. So here we are, and right now I'm actually working with a venture capital fund called True Global Ventures as their in-house AI consultant. Let's call it that. I help their portfolio companies think through AI opportunities and build some proof of concepts with them and figure out architectures and also how to use internally the current AI tools that are available, making everybody more effective and efficient.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about working with a startup company. How is it in terms of is it unorganized chaos or is it organized chaos over there when you are in a startup?
It's every company is a little bit of a chaos to a degree. So the level of chaos is probably between the 20% chaos or 80% chaos. I think a lot of startups nowadays are a lot more organized than they used to be, let's say, 20 years ago. I think we were more chaotic before. Now we have a lot more kind of simple processes, lightweight processes to deal with things. We have better tools. We can track let's say it's a software startup. We can track our development processes a lot easier. And obviously everything is online, so we can build a complete startup which is completely virtual, 100% virtual, people all around the world. We don't need to worry about creating subsidiaries everywhere where we have employees. We can use these employer of record companies. So it is actually really exciting times. And of course it helps that if you are AI related startup, there are a lot of venture funds around the world who want to invest in promising, particularly kind of vertical AI solutions.
Yeah. No, I'm curious about this working with the startups, because I had a discussion with someone, and we talked about what are there was someone who's coming from a corporate background and then went into consulting or advising startups, and what is the biggest learning that person had? And so I'm just curious to ask you the same question, as far as you're concerned, when you have worked with startups and maybe the people who are part of that startup who are in their early 20s or mid 20s, What has been for you the kind of the biggest learning of dealing with the generation who's now starting up a new company, and also how to give them the best advice you can?
Well, it was pretty funny. Last week in San Francisco, I was there for the Tech Week, and I spent a day at the WeWork office downtown San Francisco, and I was literally sitting with a whole bunch of these 20-somethings there, and um, I find that just fantastic. Is that the generation, they're super passionate about the things they want to do, and I think there's maybe not so much for the young ones, so to speak, to it's maybe pace themselves. Especially in Silicon Valley and in the U.S., people tend to appreciate work a lot more than their free time. So, and there's a culture of working super long hours. Like I know kids who graduate from college or from MBA schools, and they end up working 100, 120 hours or more a week, compared to the European model where we are a little bit stressed when we work 40 hours a week. So there's a lot of burnout. But I think that when somebody's moving from a corporate job into a startup world, that's probably more where the big gap is visible, because in corporate world we are used to rigid existing processes, and there are a lot of people helping us book travel and assistants and teams and so forth. And then you land in a startup, and I've landed out in a startup and I end up administering the website. If your title might be chief revenue officer, but if there's nobody else to write email templates, that's you. If there's nobody to do the updates on the website, that'll be you. It's you can't be afraid of picking up the phone and calling a client or a prospect, and you just have to be prepared to doing it all yourself.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah. Well, one of the things that hotels and also companies have still are in a transitioning to digital first approach. How do you guide companies at the different stages of their digital information journey? And could you speak about the necessary steps they should take to fully immerse the team into the digital transformation process, and the logic behind each steps? I mean, I know it's a question we could run one episode on this, but maybe just if you can touch a little bit on this. So, what the kind of mindset and approach you see are very important in the digital transformation journey?
I think the primary thing is to being intellectually curious, because you want to learn, you want to have a growth mindset and you want to learn new stuff. So I think that's kind of the fundamental need underneath. But after that, I think you also need to think quite critically on what you exactly need out of do you need, how much of the digital transformation do you need? Uh, I have a friend who has a bed and breakfast in Normandy in France, and their level of digital transformation was that we built them a nice website, and they have a little bit of a reservation thing there, and then they ended up later integrating with Booking.com and Hotels.com and so forth. But you kind of need to take the steps, and but they wouldn't go all the way to having like a mobile app or digital keys to the rooms, or and their business model is the super high end, because it's a chateau. It needs to be like white glove treatment. So they would never let somebody check in even at 3 o'clock in the morning with their phone. There's always somebody to receive them, and if they come at the right time in the afternoon, they get a glass of champagne, and they join the owners for a little drinks and stuff like that. So I think it's really important to think about like where you are in your business, and what the needs are, and then pick up whether it's staff or some consultants that can help you with things like marketing. Digital marketing nowadays is super important, and also then think about like the channels. Is that if you are going after the hip young people, there's no way to avoid Instagram and TikTok. You've just got to be where your clients are or prospects are. Um, so it is a very potentially lengthy journey, but luckily nowadays we start having insanely good tools out there. Like for instance, there's an AI tool now called AdCreative.ai, which will help practically anybody to write a few things about their business and what they're offering, and the ad creative AI will generate images and ad copy that you can then test on Google Ads uh, and if you want, you can probably advertise even on Booking.com. But it seems the hotel owners don't seem to like them too much because they take such a huge margin off their reservations. But whatever channel you decide to use, um, or if you want to improve the descriptions of your rooms, the images, you can have automatic image retouching software now, AI based. You can fix weather if you have a picture of your property that's otherwise beautiful, but the weather's not quite right. Adobe has amazing AI capabilities where you can literally swap the sky to be completely blue sky and sunny, and there's just so much that can be done and leveraged. So kind of pace it and figure out where your biggest issues are. What do you need to do first, and
Yeah.
attack those first.
Yeah, yeah. How about automation? Because the smaller hotels, independent hotels, tend to do a lot of manual work themselves, but there's also some automation they can put in place through different softwares that once you have the data, I mean, hopefully those people haven't booked through booking.com because they're booking.com customers and not the hotel customers. But if you get the email address and maybe the birthday, okay, probably the birthday you may get because you need to register, kind of automation that you can intelligently keep in touch with their customer after they leave and remember them on their birthday or whatnot, or any kind of automation. What are your thoughts about? Are there some apps or some software that you think can be helpful that someone can actually use, or do they need to have somebody outsource this service in order to get it working?
Yeah, not really. Like simple automation is very easy to do, and I would say that for practically anybody and everybody who is in some sort of business, you require a lightweight CRM.
Yeah,
And it can be like HubSpot nowadays is very popular among small businesses because
yeah,
it's quite cheap and it's highly capable and quite cheap. If you want to go super cheap, there's something called Odoo, which is also can do billing and other things, and it is um, it's relatively inexpensive. It's essentially kind of an open ERP, essentially out of Netherlands. Um, so I would absolutely recommend building some lightweight automated processes and keeping in touch with people. And there's also huge value in tracking, especially if you're a small property that wants to be close to the clients and prospect visitors and so forth, is to try to grab some other things about why did they come? Did they come for a wedding anniversary? Then you can remember that. You can invite them again for another wedding anniversary or wedding anniversary later, or say, hey, why don't you do a little party with your 20 your best friends, and we'll give you the few bottles of champagne to celebrate when you come. A lot of that stuff can completely be automated, and it's quite easy to personalize those, even with HubSpot or Odoo or some of these tools. And you don't have to be an expert. You just have to think like your visitor, and like what would be nice for me, or for that person when they receive that. Like everybody likes the happy birthday things. Everybody likes little discount coupons, and stuff like that. Even if they don't use them, they'll still like it. And sometimes, it's a cool marketing thing. You could say, hey, happy birthday, here's 10% for your next stay. And by the way, if you can't come, give it to your friend. Send your friend over. So you can do stuff like that as well, which would be super easy.
yeah. Very good. I mean, you're giving a lot of good tips here. I hope. Well, there will be a transcript, or in show notes, so all the viewers can take note of this. So some good stuff. Something called data-driven decision making. Can you explain what is it, and how can it help you to grow faster? And what is it all about?
Yeah, it's kind of my favorite topic. Everybody talks about it, right? We always say that our decision need to be based on facts and data, and but very very often um, we say we say this, but then the hippo process happens. And if you don't know what hippo means, it's the highest paid person's opinion. um, so it's very dangerous. And I usually, the way I approach it is that I always tell people is that I have lots of opinions, but my opinions don't matter. It's only the client's opinion, the person who pays our bills, essentially, opinion matters. And what is really important when we do, so the data can be about customer experience, online behavior data, tracking data from cookies, third-party data from other sources that we track, other consumer-related things. Um, but what's really important is that we are conscious about the biases that come with this data, and that we collect the data that we require for the decisions, and then we try to interpret in the most objective way possible. Because sometimes you have this confirmation bias. We kind of already have a gut decision or a gut feeling on how the decision should go, and then we collect data that supports our opinion. And that's
Yeah,
absolutely not
that's
data
true.
driven. That's kind of a, it's not even data assisted. It's maybe a data assisted mistake usually, because nothing good comes out of, somebody once said that gut decisions are dangerous because it depends on what you had for breakfast.
That's so true. That's so true. Yeah, that's why I was interested in this data-driven decision making, because it's in one way it's a sensitive topic, particularly companies where the man on the top has a very clear idea what he wants, and also he has maybe he's good at listening, but at the end of the day, the decision he makes is on his own, based on what he had for breakfast, and that's obviously not the best idea and for growing. But example of companies not in the hospitality, but that you see are good examples of how they're growing with the data-driven decision making. Any
Yeah, no,
kind of ideas,
yeah.
or who do you?
I think one of the really good examples on this, and also related to the human factor in the decision making, is actually Amazon. Love them or hate them, but they are a very tough place to work at. And but what they do is that they are very, very data driven when they take their decisions, whether it's the Amazon, the store, or it's AWS, the cloud provider. And in addition to having very clear data on what works, what's not working, where the profitability is, where the business is headed, they also have this disagree and commit approach. So they prepare their meetings very well, and everybody gets a chance to see the documentation and the numbers ahead of time. If they didn't have time to read these things ahead of time, they spend time in the beginning of the meeting to make sure everybody looks at the numbers and the facts at hand. And there's kind of the process includes this kind of place for disagreement. Not everybody always agrees. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I said that, the second we have two people in a meeting, we will probably disagree on something. So in this kind of case, they can have disagreements, and they look at the numbers, but then finally the decision is made, and everybody commits to the decision that was made. So even if I didn't agree with it, I will say, okay, fine, I do disagree, I voice my concerns, but since we have decided to go this way, we're all going to go into the same direction. So I find that quite interesting, is that they integrate both the hard data as well as the human factor into the process, and that's probably one of the reasons why they are quite successful.
Yeah, what I like about the Amazon, the founder, he started to write to the shareholders letters, and these shareholder letters over the years has become a book talking about the philosophy and future of the business. And in fact, I have an episode with the author of this book, and I found that quite enlightening to learn about the thinking process and the culture about Amazon. So it's a very good example to give.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when we lived in the US, Amazon was terribly convenient, because we had the shortest delivery times we had for some items around New York City was 2 hours. So you order online, and 2 hours later it's at your door. So it also creates very poor behavior for people like me, who don't necessarily want to go find that screwdriver in the garage in the big mess. So it's faster to just order a new one, and it comes in 2 hours when I'm ready to go do some work. So yeah, it kind of corrupts the consumers in a crazy way.
Well, it's very useful for impulsive purchases also, when you feel like you want to have something, and Amazon will deliver very, very quickly. Yeah,
Yeah, or you don't
very
want to
good. Okay,
carry.
that's a good.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Uh, Maybe we can talk about the measuring success, uh, about the KPIs, key performance indicators. What metrics or key KPIs should an organization use to measure the success of their digital information strategy? Could you speak a little bit about that thought process when they and uh, and about the metrics you think are relevant?
Yeah, so there are essentially there are. I'm a big fan of the OKR model, the objectives and key results, that became quite famous, I think, when Google started using them some years ago. But I think it started from GE or some other huge American corporation. Um, but obviously KPIs have been around forever, and other related, management by objectives. These babies have many names. Uh, the one of the things that I've noticed over the years where we tend to go wrong is that we create too many of those objectives or KPIs, whatever. So what I'm a huge fan of having only three or so, sometimes maybe four or five at the most, of objectives, and then you have different ways of kind of key results to track those objectives. And I think each organization needs to think, what are the things which are the most important uh, numbers. So, like for instance, when I was running an e-commerce business in the U.S. For a scientific publishing company, we our key metric was essentially was revenue was the number one thing, and then we looked at like what drives our revenue, and then we started breaking it into pieces, and working backwards is that what are the impacts of our revenue? And essentially it was the number of people coming to the site and the conversion rate of them putting something into the shopping cart and them being able to check out as quickly as possible. So then we started really digging into each of those particular areas. Is that, it doesn't help if we bring people onto our website if they don't find the products they need. So we need to do better recommendations, better search, better uh, promotions for the top things and the most relevant things we want to share with them. And because this was healthcare related, there could be a situation where because we track a lot of their behavior, we could have a cardiologist come to our website, but we knew that they had also looked at pediatric content. We would start also giving them some pediatric cardiology or pediatric something else information, and tracking every interaction on the site. If they're clicking on it, how much time they're spending on it, are they putting it in, adding to the cart and checking out and so forth. So I think in each of these cases, you kind of have to figure out is like, what are the couple of the most important things you're trying to achieve, and then break it into sort of a workflow or value chain or whatever you want to call it, and then start looking at each of these uh, handover conversion parts and what can we do differently and optimizing it as a whole. That's what I like, is like sometimes you have to unoptimize a piece of the process, but you have to make sure that you maximize the goal you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah. In terms of tracking customer experience, what are some best ways to, or how do you best track customer experience? Because in hotels, it's the golden thing that you need to understand that experience. It's not always what you hear when the person who's checking out and paying their bill, but there must be during that customer journey a certain way that you can track it. And I mean, in the digital space where you have e-commerce and so on, I think that's one thing. But maybe you can just talk about from your experience how you see that, how important it is.
Yeah, this is obviously super important, and I used to be the CEO of Happy or Not, which is and that was the reason why I moved from the US to Finland. It's a company specializing in measuring the customer and employee experience in physical spaces, and we were doing fantastically well until the pandemic hit, and of course then that took a big hit in the business strategy and the business overall. But it's still the thesis still holds, which is that you need to try to understand the customer experience in the most important touch points that might happen. So, like in a hotel, for instance, when you look at, like, you can look at your reviews from Yelp and Google Maps and other places, and you start to get a little bit of an idea, or hotels.com and Booking and so forth. You get a little bit of an idea what people are saying about your place. But the hard part is that they already left by the time you see this experience, or this kind of reporting. So one way of doing it is that if you are struggling with your the kind of the restaurant food and beverage side of things, maybe what you do is you put some of these devices into the restaurant, and you ask, like, how was your dinner, how was your breakfast, how was the experience. And as you get real-time experience there, or the reporting on the experience, you can start adjusting. If you see people are hitting the red button, you can actually, then the manager can go and look, like, what's going on in our breakfast buffet, on why are people so upset. And then you can quickly see that, okay, there's not enough food, or it's very messy. Many things can happen, right, that make people quite unhappy with the experience, and you can potentially rectify it even within the shift. If you start seeing at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., by 8 a.m. you may have already addressed some of the issues, and you can see that then things started turning into green. Um, Similarly, you can, if you're a little bit bigger hotel, and you have a decent website or an app, you can ping people as they are in the hotel. You could ping them on the app and say, loyalty app, like, Hilton and everybody has those, right? So you could do a little ping saying, hey, how's it going? How was your check-in and your room experience? Everything good? And if somebody says, well, not really, and you are giving a little bit of feedback, you could send them a bottle of water, or little snacks to say, hey, by the way, or fruits or something, to say, hey, thank you for your feedback. Whether it was positive or negative, it doesn't matter. As long as there is some feedback, give a little bit of a reward for the person who bothered to spend a couple of minutes on giving it. Um, that kind of near real time feedback is precious. It's solid gold, but it also requires that you're willing to adjust and do something about it, right? If you're just collecting it for the sake of collecting it, it's just reporting. It's not that useful. But if you are truly motivated in continuously improving and fixing things, definitely the experience will improve over time.
Sure. And it's also important that all this information is shared with the team so they understand what's going on. And traditionally, hotels have been notorious of having the too many meetings, and the morning meeting has only been about reviewing with the occupancy of the previous night, and also about the average room rate and arriving guests. But I think that the importance is that the customer experience, what has been the experience so far, and what are the expectations of the people who are coming. There might be some guests who have stayed for several times, and they have a very clear idea what they want, not only the room type, or they want to have the particular pillow, or their favorite fruit. So, those are the discussions that relates to customer experience, which are so relevant, rather than talking about the past history about average room rate, because with that information, there's nothing you can do about it. So
Yeah,
that's something just as a hint for hotels who are still talking about last night's occupancy and average room rate, which, so what,
Yeah, and most of the
Yeah.
employees don't actually care about it, right? And in that sense, it would be so easy to put a tablet or some, like, a TV on the wall in the break room, or wherever you do these early meetings or the morning meetings, and just share the metrics and share uh, the yesterday's metrics from the different measurement points. Is that we had 78% of our visitors to the restaurant for dinner last night were very happy, and some of the, even because you can type some feedback, and you could put some feedback onto the screen as well, and that's some retailers do it really well. Like in Nordics, you have the El Gigante, and in Finland, Giganti and stuff like that. They are huge users of the Happy or Not devices, and they always share it both with employees, but also with all the customers. They share the metrics for the day or the day before. As you walk into the store, you'll see that the kind of the expected happiness is 98%. So people already walk in there thinking that I'm going to be pretty happy today when I visit this place because everybody else is happy, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so that's very good. Yeah, well, that's something to think about for hotels and so on. Uh, Artificial intelligence, AI, it has been coming like a storm, and there are so many applications coming out every day. I'm totally lost of what's out there anymore. But uh, could you speak about employing artificial intelligence in the hospitality industry? What would be the from if you're giving advice, opportunities, threats, and weaknesses, because
Yeah.
they're covering all those three boxes for sure when you're talking about AI. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, AI has, or let's say the generative AI, which is based on these large language models, has become incredibly good in the last, let's say, 8 months. When ChatGPT originally was launched, that was kind of a democratization of the generative AI. It became very known with the consumers, and practically every business started to look at it. Um, it was interesting, but not terribly good in the beginning. It was hallucinating a lot. So we talk about hallucination when the models are inventing facts, and and essentially the reason why they're still, to a degree, they're inventing facts is that there is a highly complex statistical model behind the scenes, which is essentially estimating like what needs to come after, and then today it's become way more complex than that, but super simplification is essentially is that. Um, the the danger essentially is that if it's used without proper supervision, you'll still end up having some mistakes happen. So regardless what tool somebody is using, it's worthwhile to look at the results. And a great example is images generated. Like Midjourney is one of the best image creation AI tool right now. And obviously Adobe has fantastic features. But one of the early issues was when these pictures, like kind of photorealistic pictures, were generated with AI. People often had 6 or more fingers in one hand, because the AI hadn't really figured out the concept that you will only have 5 fingers. So they just started kind of generating. It looks like that, um, or the arms would appear in the weird places and things like that are quick to check. For text generation perspective, it's the current tools are absolutely amazing. They're even good for like checking legal text. Uh, there are also a lot of legal related AI tools out there in the market today, but you don't even have to have a legal specific tool. You can essentially, if somebody sends a contract for you, if you can't use your own hotel contract for some event and they want to send theirs, you can essentially pass that through uh, an AI tool like Anthropic Claude is good. There are a number of others. You could even use the current ChatGPT and so forth, and ask like, can you abstract this? Can you give me the most salient points of this? Can you describe what risks there might be? So you need to learn a little bit of prompting, but you can definitely leverage it to make your life easier. And I think a big part where the hospitality industry particularly can benefit from the current AI tools is, like I mentioned already, like getting better images, but also expanding the language they have on their website or the descriptions about their location. Um, because a lot of time it takes a lot of effort to talk about the environment you are in. For instance, like I stayed in Lisbon a while back, outside Lisbon proper, you know, in a kind of a small chain. They have a few hotels, and nowhere on their website did it say that there was a golf course within 5 minutes drive. Only when I got, and I love playing golf. So only when I got to the first morning, I went to the breakfast on terrace, and I saw the golf course literally across the highway. I was like, shit, I could have done, planned my trip differently and done something around it. So this generative AI, because it has so much content around, plus it can do multiple languages, you could ask it to describe in a very traveler friendly way what's surrounding, what can you do around your hotel. You could ask it to critique your room descriptions. It's because sometimes the room descriptions are pretty bland. So you could kind of spruce up your content and make it a little bit more exciting. Um, we are thinking of like I'm thinking of one great use case for AI is a scenario where I used to run pretty big sales meetings in the US, and we needed to figure out locations. Like we would go to, New Orleans, or we would go to Scottsdale, Arizona, or Hawaii, or some other places. But it always starts with my request is that I have 500 salespeople and I need to have so many break rooms and so like a large conference room. And then I need to have good food and beverage service, and I need to have some outdoor activities around. So I have like a list of criteria, and then I would send it to somebody, and then they would start looking at location scouts and others and start contacting hotels. But it would be so cool that I could just dump it and it would automatically tell me, it's like, okay, here are these, we recommend you these 3 places you should go look, and these are the top hotels that match your criteria on this. So I think this is the direction. Like we're going to start, consumers also are going to start bypassing like booking.com, because they will start getting to a point where, I live in Jersey. I want to take my 4 kids out on spring break or Easter vacation, someplace warm. Here's my budget. Propose me something. That kind of approach, and then I'll just pick up where I want to go, and I'll probably even I wouldn't be surprised if within 6 months we have some automated booking capabilities in there, that they will book directly with the airlines and hotels and coordinate all of that work for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the future seems to be that it's we talk about the artificial intelligence, but about intelligent advisor, that you have your personal intelligent advisor that knows the more you use it, it will know more about you, and then when you need to make that plan and to plan a trip with the family and so on, or plan because your kids want to eat some particular things, and you ask them to ask your advice. As an intelligent assistant to suggest some place to eat and so on. I mean, I think that's going to be on probably on the mobile device or something.
Yeah, and it's even, they don't necessarily. I can tell something about what I like, but I would be perfectly happy having some local agent on my phone, uh, like an app that looks at my vacation pictures and looks at the places I've been to. Could look at like my United profile and see where I've been flying. Could look at my Marriott and so forth. My kind of all of these point systems, and say, okay, based on all of this information, we think you should probably go again to Costa Rica, because it seemed like you had a great time with your family there. Because all the pictures are smiling and sunny and blah blah type of thing. So you're absolutely right. It's I don't think we are too far away from this kind of super intelligent assistant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, some favorite analytics tools. What are you some that you could kind of give a tip here now for the viewers and the listeners about the favorite analytic tools and why?
My really favorite one is a little bit of a sledgehammer for many use cases, but I have been a huge fan of something called Tableau since a long time before it got acquired by Salesforce. But that's kind of like an industrial strength analytics tool that you can do pretty much anything and everything. Um, I would say if you are a teeny tiny hotel, or if you are like a chain of 3-4 hotels, it might be overkill. And
Yeah.
and so that's kind of like in the very very high end, you can do absolutely everything with it. And then probably the low end is
Okay.
uh, Google has already also a couple, not Google Analytics per se. Google Analytics is um, quite boring, but they have something called Looker Studio, which is fairly capable, and it's all in the cloud. It's fairly easy to use, and you can do fair amount of things with it. and it's essentially free to start. And then if you want some more features, you pay a little bit for it. Um, so you have like a few $100s per month subscription for Tableau, and then you have practically free with Looker Studio. So I think, and Looker Studio is quite fine. And if you are a Microsoft Office user, you may be able to get Power BI as part of your Office subscription, which is also a fine product. Uh, so so I like a lot about visualization, and because oftentimes you can see some insights. Sorry, I caught a cold while I was in San Francisco, but yeah, sometimes like especially if you are a chain of hotels, let's say like if you are in a country in a single country, but you have multiple properties, sometimes it helps to look at for instance, like the where do people come from who visit these different properties, and you map those people to see like do they travel far, or are they more regional, or are they completely national that they come from everywhere. So sometimes you see some interesting clusters that come out, which can help you then redefine your marketing and your targeting activities as well.
Very good. Now, you talked about golf, and you in Portugal you missed the opportunity to play golf. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you: what links golf and business? I think you have that's one of your questions you like to answer when people interview you.
Yeah, so a lot of business people obviously play golf, which is number one is that you spend several hours with friendly people in a quite relaxed environment. So it's conducive for creating relationships and sometimes talking a little bit about business, but you don't want to be an asshole about it, so to speak. You're not there to pitch your business nonstop. You're there to create relationship. But what is
Yeah.
where I find it more connected from a mindset perspective is that golf is very much about continuous improvement. You're trying to do it positively, but you're competing against yourself essentially, and you can track absolutely everything if you want. I, for one, I have sensors in all my golf clubs, and I have a software that tracks absolutely everything. So after the round, I can compare myself to my targets, and I can see if I'm improving or declining. This summer has been very up and down, so it's been frustrating. But it's similar to the business. It's you can only measure things so you can only improve things that you can measure. So it's a little bit like the customer service approach is that you can train people on how to receive people and everything else, but if you don't measure how people perceive that, uh, you don't know how you're doing. So you're just doing stuff without really knowing if it's good or bad. At least when you're driving a car, if you are driving badly, somebody's going to honk at you. But if you are the receptionist at the hotel and they're doing a little bad job and the visitors guests don't tell anybody about that, you may be eroding your brand and your perception as a property. So that's kind of where it is. It's
Yeah. Well, I was getting
all about score.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when I was playing golf, I used to get a lot of feedback because I was reading Golf Digest all the time, and those magazines gives you the best tips how professionals are perfecting their swing. So I was reading a lot of those, and I tried to apply them to my game. But it also meant that something happened in my game, and I was the slowest player. And I also got feedback from the three other guys who I was playing with that forget this Golf Digest. You just keep an eye on the ball and stay behind the ball, and everything will be all right. But I was made. I think they gave me a nickname about the slowest player. So I can relate to the golf aspect for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I was like you. I used to read the golf magazines, but not so much anymore. But if somebody likes golf, there are a lot of really good pros on YouTube who are giving some very quick instructions. And actually, YouTube will teach you anything. Um, but I think the main thing really is to, it's a little bit like learning a new language. You just got to do it. Get out there and do it. And you can practice as much as you want, but rarely the practice goes all the way to the course every time. So I prefer to play more than I practice. So that's a little bit my challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's interesting that you have so many sensors that you're able to track actually every step of the way your game. I found it quite fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's and they're I've had them now for 6 years, and it's an American company. Because they have so many clients, they're collecting billions of shot data around the different courses around the world. So they have an absolutely incredible benchmark on what good looks like or what the pro looks like. So you can have a really effective comparisons, and it's obviously for a data geek like me, it's super interesting. But even somebody who's not that interested could also benefit from understanding where the challenges are.
yeah, yeah. Well, Sami, this has been a very interesting conversation I had with you. We covered a lot of areas, but I have two more questions for before we wrap up. And one question that I like to ask all my guests, besides what we talked about, because you travel a lot, you stay in a lot of hotels. What do you see happening in hospitality that hoteliers should take note of? I mean, seeing from your perspective as a customer.
Yeah, I think one of the areas that is happening a lot more is kind of using the kind of bring your own device, using your phones to unlock the doors, and being able to check in remotely. Um, that's definitely one area, and one area that was super frustrating to me, honestly, in the last two hotels. I was in Singapore, and then I was in um, where was I? I was in Bulgaria a little while ago, in a nice Hilton property. But they have huge TVs, which are supposedly smart TVs, and I was like, okay, so I can connect my phone, and I have a Netflix and my locally downloaded movies and things on my phone, and I was like, since they offer me the streaming capability, let me stream it, and the damn thing never works. It's like that's something which is interesting to me, is that um, is those are kind of the standard digital experiences that you would kind of expect to have, and it's seemingly you have them, but they don't work. And if you have challenges, then I would imagine that they could say, okay, don't use it with this version of Android, or it only works with iPhone, or but kind of set my expectations right so that I don't get disappointed. um, I think that's generally speaking is is figuring out where to set the expectations, and where the expectations are set, and then do everything you can to overdo it a little bit. It's because otherwise my Singapore stay was absolutely fantastic. But it's kind of crazy that the one thing that pops to the top of my head is that hassle with the TV. So it is quite silly. Like everything else went so well. It's um, and I would argue that the overall experience was a little annoying at the end.
Of course, of course. I mean, especially if they're promising you that this is the part of the service, and you have everything set in your from your mobile device. I mean, that should not be a no-brainer. But yeah, it's more common than you believe me. It's more common than ever, and I have experienced many times also that the same thing. And then because I look at the TV channels what they have, and sometimes they're very limited, and maybe you
Yep.
have some access to other content that you want to watch and so on, or downloaded your movies and so on, and then it's too bad you cannot enjoy that as part with their device on the wall.
There's only so much of the French TV 24 that I can watch abroad, because sometimes they have only local. Like in Bulgaria, they had many local language channels, and I don't understand anything of that. And then maybe one that did a little bit of English, and then the French TV. So I always find the French TV everywhere I go in the world, and I can watch that because at least I understand it, and it's usually news focused.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's
but
well,
yeah,
it's
it's like
actually well, it's a very good channel. I tend to watch news through their English speaking content also, so I enjoy
yeah.
that. So, Sami, lastly, if people are interested to find out more about your activities, and how can they do so? How can they reach you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to follow me on LinkedIn, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I tend to share a fair amount of content, and I write some number of blogs and longer form articles as well as some short things. So definitely, and I'm more than happy to, if anybody wants to ask questions, and like you probably figured out, I'm pretty opinionated, but again, my opinion only matters when it matters. So hopefully, when it relates to like hotel stays, I've stayed in a lot of hotels around the world. I can give some one person's opinion, right? But I'm really interested in all of this stuff on how do you optimize the experience, and um, I would absolutely love to be able to, like, even like when it comes to hotels, like control the climate and everything else on my phone on some app. I'd be more than happy to download an app to do all of that stuff, or maybe I'm a edge case in the technology space. So but yeah, LinkedIn will be a good place. So I'm Sami.Hero. You can find me on LinkedIn. There's nobody else with that name there, so no issues finding me.
Just as I just remember from staying in Doha in a hotel, and we're talking about over 10 years ago. Without naming the brand, there's a Danish, very hi-fi brand. Everybody knows it anyway. And they had their remote control for the TV, but also in that remote, you're supposed to also control your climate and lights and so on. And they give you a nice thick booklet, so you have to study the whole manual to figure out how it works. And so I thought, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm only staying here one night, so I'm just going to go and click off my lights and so on. And so I just learned, okay, I think we still have have a little time we need to get over all of this remote control issues. And yeah, maybe we're talking past 10 years, so I think we have surpassed this initial challenge that I had.
Yeah, one of the things, again, coming back briefly to the AI, is that the key to the AI interactions is the natural language processing, and the various different models have become so good understanding the language and the context of the language that you could essentially have something like the Amazon Alexa or the Siri or the Google Home or something like that. You could essentially start integrating it in hotels if you wanted. So you didn't have to like figure even apps out. You could just talk in Arabic or in Finnish or in Swedish or in German or whatever language you speak, and the system I would say in probably 95% of the cases, the system would be perfectly capable of converting those into signals for the TV and AC and all of these other things. Room service,
Exactly. Yeah.
The risk is that your children, the risk is that if you do that, then your children will start ordering, burgers and fries and soda all night long when they are, waiting for the parents to come back from their dinner.
Pizza for breakfast and.
Yeah.
Finally, are you for your personal use any apps to track your day or kind of recording your happenings and so you have your own little data for which you can use for whatever purpose you want to use?
I think so I use the Finnish, the Oura ring. So that's probably the one thing that I use for the kind of the physical thing, and then I use the app where I can tag different things, like when something kind of weird happens, so I can have a better understanding on why I'm super tired. If I look back, is like what happened last week on Tuesday, and particularly last week was rough because I probably had 4 or 5 nights when I slept maybe 4 or 5 hours. Going from Europe to San Francisco and then New York and back, and a couple of red eyes along the way. So that takes a toll, but that's probably the one I use most to just track like generally what's going on in my life.
I found an app which I've been using now for a few months called Voice Notes, and this Voice Note is something I just record stuff on my mobile device. It actually creates a headline, and also I can convert that to a blog if I want to. For instance, we spent a couple of weeks ago traveling with my wife, and I every day I spoke about our experience from that trip, and then I collected it to almost like a journal about our life and so on. And I found that very useful. And of course, if you have a Apple Watch, you can actually speak to that device also with the voice notes. But I found this Indian couple who has developed this initially this for themselves. Now it's a commercial app that it's very helpful for people who like to share something for themselves, and they don't want to feel controlled that whatever you talk about and you put in maybe in the website and so on disappears into somebody else's database. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very good. Yeah, I use the OneNote from Microsoft because I kind of got into it several years ago, because I have so many notes in there, I just keep on using that one, and it does a fairly good handwriting caption as well. Because when I use the tablet with a pen, it worked quite well. So yeah, these tools are, everybody should find productivity tools as well as this kind of like personal life tracking. Some people, they do paddle, and my wife tracks her progress in her paddle games and stuff, and she has an app for that. And yeah, so whatever keeps you getting up every morning and keeps on energized so that we can live forever.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Social Hotelier Show. Make sure to visit our website, The Social Hotelier Show, blueberry.net, where you can subscribe to the show in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play, or via RSS, so you never miss a show. While you're at it, if you find value in this show, we appreciate a rating in Apple Podcast. Or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that will help us out too. Be sure to tune in for our next episode.